Hi, I'm Parry Klassen. I'm a small peach and pomegranate farmer from the Reedley area of Fresno County. We have 20 acres of fruit that we grow in combination with some smaller acreage of apples and cherries. I grew up on a farm not too far from where I'm at now. My dad had 150 acres of peaches, plums, and nectarines. So I grew up at a time when integrated pest management had not even been invented as a term. I wear several hats in addition to my farm. I work for two nonprofit organizations. One is called the East San Joaquin Water Quality Coalition, and we represent over 2,500 farmers on about 550,000 acres of cropland in Madera, Merced, and Stanislaus County to the Regional Water Board. We have a group permit where we work with farmers to try to improve and change practices to prevent contamination of surface water in our three-county region. The other group I work for is called CURES, a Coalition for Urban Rural Environmental Stewardship, and our primary focus has been developing management practices and outreach programs directed to farmers on improving practices, again, to protect surface water from pesticide contamination. One of the most important parts about integrated pest management today that I think many would agree with is that the practices are integral to how we grow fruit. It used to be common to talk about our using IPM practices, and it's still talked about today, but many of the things that were new and progressive in the 80s and 90s are now becoming such standard practices that growers don't even talk about them as being IPM. They just integrate them into what they are doing to grow fruit, to protect especially against diseases and insects. IPM is invaluable in our production of fruit and vegetables in Central California. We are farming in one of the most pest-prone areas of the state, possibly the world. We have temperatures and climate conditions that are conducive to dozens of damaging pests to fruit and vegetables. We have no choice in many instances, in most instances, to control these pests because they cause such severe yield losses, reduction in fruit quality. So we have no choice but to treat or respond to these pest pressures that we have. In the 60s and 70s, when pesticides first became widely used in this area, the products that were used were called broad-spectrum insecticides and fungicides. They were non-specific. They would pretty much kill everything in an orchard, all the insects, both beneficial and insects that were causing damage to the crop. What we did learn through the years was that these broad-spectrum insecticides in particular were causing pest pressures that we didn't need to experience because of that killing of all the insects in an orchard. What we've learned over time, and now is of course called integrated pest management, is the ability to identify these beneficial insects and preserve their living conditions in the orchard so there are these populations able to control the pests. Most important to this has been the newer technologies that have come as a result of integrated pest management. This is softer insecticides, new scouting methods, and more importantly, a better understanding of the biology of the pests that we are actually dealing with. This understanding of pests is really, I believe, the core of integrated pest management. The studies that were done by the University of California and private industry are so specific and so precise, they can tell us exactly when an insect is going to lay an egg in a field, when that egg will hatch and turn into a larvae, and then when that larvae begins feeding on the crop or the foliage of the crop. Because we understand this enables us as farmers to specifically time the treatments of our insecticides to these growth stages of a pest. So when we're out spraying a certain insecticide, be it a soft chemical or otherwise, we are able to catch that insect at its most vulnerable stage, control it easily and more early than we would if we waited till it was an adult or when we started to see damage on our crop. The other important integrated approach that we've been taking, that we can take in stone fruit in particular, is that we delay what we call our dormant sprays to the latter part of the wintertime. Because in the wintertime, although it may seem there's nothing alive out in an orchard, there are actually eggs and small immature stages of these pests that when it warms up, they will begin to hatch and cause damage in a field. So what we have done in dormant sprays is we have delayed those applications as late as we possibly can, so those insects are beginning to move around in the warmer parts of the winter, and they are more susceptible to being controlled by these products. The other thing that's really important about integrated pest management is that the industry that creates pest control materials has responded to this growing interest in integrated pest management, and they are developing chemistries that are specific to those growth stages of the pests that enable us to control them effectively and yet not cause secondary damage to the beneficial insects that are in the field. So compared to 20 years ago, even 15 years ago, growers have a lot more products to choose from that are these softer chemistries that enable them to control these pests and not cause damage to the beneficial insects that are in the field. The other thing that we understand much better now is beneficial insects and what exactly are the types of insects that will control the insects that are the bad bugs, the things that will attack our fruit crops and cause the damage that doesn't enable us to pack them into a box or even remove them from the field and harvest. So understanding which of the good bugs that are out in the field and which chemistries they're sensitive to enables us to do a better job of targeting those pests we have while preserving those beneficial pests, which feed many times on certain pest insects, bad bugs, that will be causing the damage to the crop. So this understanding of beneficial insects, the combination of new products, newer low-risk products, and the better understanding of the pest cycle has been really the foundation of integrated pest management and enables us to be successful in it on an annual basis. The other thing that's been interesting to watch over the last 20 to 25 years is that when we first started talking about, and I was a magazine writer writing about these subjects, is that the practices have become so integrated into our farming that we no longer even think about what we are doing as integrated pest management. It is something that we do. We know when mites are the eggs are about to hatch. We treat at that time. There's other things that we know just intrinsically because we've been doing them for 10 to 15 years that are part of our normal farming cultural practices. Another important change that's occurred is that in relation to water quality, one of our biggest problems has been through the years is where farmers will spray their dormant insect sprays to trees at a time in the winter time when we have more chance of rain events, where we can have rainfall that can subsequently wash these pesticides off the orchard onto stream beds and into waterways near the orchards. So a couple of things have come to light in recent years that many are doing, and that is that in the wintertime, the first rain events that you have in December, typically in December, are when the soil is the driest. It's in January and February after a winter of rainfall that you start seeing the runoff because the soil is saturated and the rain just rolls right off the ground into the waterways. So growers are encouraged in these areas that have a tendency to run off to try to get their dormant sprays on as early as possible. One of the more important advances that we've made in tree crops in recent years is the development of new chemistries, new insecticides that enable us to treat pests more effectively during the growing season. Historically, in the 70s and 80s, it was learned through university studies and otherwise that the best time to treat for many pests was in the wintertime. There were not workers in the field, there was not the risk of exposure to those workers, and there was also the understanding that these overwintering pests could be treated and controlled so that they never emerged at all during the growing season. However, at the same time in the late 80s and 90s, we began to discover insecticides showing up in water sampling in the main rivers in the Central Valley. This, of course, was tied back to the use during the dormant season. So what these new products have enabled us to do is treat these pests in the early spring or late spring and early summer when they're just starting to move, and then which enabled us to eliminate our dormant sprays entirely. So we were no longer even putting these materials on during the rainy season when they had the potential to run off and be a problem in surface water. In almonds in particular, there's been a dramatic decrease in the amount of dormant sprays that have been made. There's some estimates of 20 to 30% of the orchards remaining that use dormant sprays, and that's primarily because of a single pest that is very difficult to spray during the growing season. It's called scale. But the remainder of these orchards, almonds in particular, are not even sprayed during the wintertime, so the risk of surface water runoff is completely eliminated with these insecticides. The other important thing about integrated pest management to consumers is that farmers are acutely aware of the concern of people that buy food in the grocery stores of pesticide residues. The products that have been developed by companies now, the newer generation of insecticides, have very short residual activity in the orchard, so that when you spray a product on, it can be completely broken down within a week to 2 weeks, and the residues that are in the crop are not even detectable. So this enables us to send produce to the market that has no pesticide residues at all. And in fact, state testing has showed that we have less than 1% of our produce in their sampling program that shows pesticide residues that are even detectable. And that doesn't even talk about the safety levels that we have. There are rarely even exceedances of the safety margins that are put on these pesticide residue standards. So we are very aware of this concern by consumers and the desire to not have residues in the produce that they buy. We also are very keenly aware of the desire for people to have clean produce. They don't want to buy things that have worms in them or have scars. This is something that, even though you can explain to people that that's not damaging, most people will pass by something that has scars and damage. So the emphasis of the companies that develop these products has been very keenly focused on developing products that have low residues, that have quick action, and that are specifically targeted to growth cycles of those insects out in the field. These all combine together to give shoppers the cleanest produce in the world in California and around the country where our products are shipped, and high quality, consistent high quality. So in all aspects of fruit growing, we've used the knowledge developed by the university and others to better understand the pests, so we are better able to control them at their most susceptible time with the least amount of insecticides and herbicides, reducing the load both in the environment and also on the produce that we ship to market.